here we go. So let's come to the mat. And we're going to start in a supine position, laying flat on our back. Knees are going to be bent, feet and legs are going to be sits bones distance apart in that nice parallel position. We've got that little gap at the small of the back, and the rib cage, we want to make sure that it's not flaring up towards the ceiling. We're not putting too much pressure on the very top of our shoulder blades. We want to anchor down into the bottom half of our shoulder blades as we seat the rib cage in, keeping that pelvis nice and neutral. I'm going to keep my hands at my hips to kind of get that feedback to see if I'm shifting or twisting out of position. As we bring that right leg up to tabletop position, I'm going to work from a pointed toe. If you tend to cramp at the back of the leg, work a flexed ankle. And we're going to hinge at the hip. And on the inhale, we're going to toe tap or heel tap that mat. Nice smooth glide of the leg from the hip. We're not changing the angle of the knee. We're going to keep it nice and stable, locked in at that 90-degree angle. And it's a smooth glide of the leg in the hip. I'm working into extension to bring that thigh, that knee away from the chest as the foot taps the mat. And we'll go one more here on this right side. And we'll slide that foot back, reset in line with the sit bones. Reset the upper body, the torso as you bring your left leg to tabletop, and we hinge at the hip. Again, maintaining that bend in the knee. We're not going to use the knee joint to find the floor, to find the mat. We want to work that hip extension of the leg moving in the hip, nice and smooth. We've got that even weight across the chest as the shoulder blades are pressing and anchoring to the mat, as well as across the hips, across the pockets for that balance from right to left side of the hips. Let's go two more here on this left side, nice and smooth. And we'll bend the knee, draw the heel back towards the hip, reaching the arms nice and long down by your side. Let's tilt the hips back, imprint into that C curve. So we're going to scoop. We're going to draw from pubic bone up the front of the torso to create that flexion, that little lift of the pubic bone, the tailbone towards the ceiling as you connect the low back to the mat. Drawing the ribs, the abdominals in, and then we articulate back to that neutral pelvic position, that little tunnel, that gap at the small of the back, and exhale to tilt. Working just that hip movement, just that flexion of the low back. If you're avoiding flexion, you could work a neutral spine and just lift the hips up about an inch off of the mat. Feeling the hamstrings fire, keeping that movement, that articulation out of your low back. As we're moving the hips, we want to keep the upper body nice and stable. The shoulders don't slide up towards the neck and the ears. We keep the collarbone spreading wide and the upper back connected to the floor. Last pelvic tilt. And we'll come back to a nice neutral spine. Moving into leg changes, we'll bring our legs to tabletop. Arms can be at your side or at the hips or at a T. And we're going to alternate those hinges at the hip. Nice smooth movement of the legs. Again, not moving the knee. The foot is finding the floor as you push the thigh, the knee away from the chest, away from your body. We've got that nice smooth movement from side to side. If you're feeling any pressure in the low back, go to a smaller movement. Shorter range. You could also add a little pelvic tilt to decompress that low back. Draw the abdominals in deeper, pull the rib cage down and in. And we'll go 3 more each side. After your last one on that left, we'll rest the feet, Draw the heels back in line with the sit bones, reaching the arms nice and long. We're going to bridge. For those of you that are not articulating, that hip lift. And for those of you that are working the pelvic tilt and the pelvic curl, we'll tilt the hips back, imprint the low back without the shoulders moving, and we're going to peel and lift up off of the mat. One segment, one vertebra at a time, knitting the rib cage in, engaging the glutes as you lift the hips higher, sending the knees forward towards the toes. Next exhale, we curl down. So we're holding that nice bridge at the top for a breath or two. Give you some time to reset that position. Nice smooth articulation as you roll up. We're weighting the chest, weighting the shoulder blades, flat against the mat, curling down along the spine, piece by piece, vertebra by vertebra, making sure that the arms and the shoulders don't start to slip up towards the neck and the ears. We want to keep them reaching down the back, down the side of the body. And when you're in that bridge at the top, we're going to hold for just a breath or two so you can engage inner thighs, get into the glutes more. Zip up from the abdominals, from bottom of the hips all the way up to the chest. And then nice smooth articulation as you curl down, piece by piece. All the way through back to that neutral spine. One more pelvic curl, one more shoulder bridge. Nice and smooth along the spine, stretching the back as you curl down. Bringing our legs to tabletop position, we'll interlace our fingers, bring our hands back behind the head to support the head and the neck. On the next exhale, we'll fold and lift. Coming up into that chest lift, that hold here, right leg reaches out, very straight, very long out over the mat, and we draw it back on the exhale. Inhale, left leg glides out, straighter and longer, and slow to pull it back. We're maintaining that nice deep fold at the mid-ribs to draw the shoulder blades forward and up off of the mat. Ribs knit in as you draw navel to spine. And as the legs move, we keep the weight balanced between the hips, anchored to the mat. And we're always reaching straighter, reaching longer with that leg to get that full extension of the knee. That full lengthening of the leg out of the hip as we change from side to side. Head is resting back comfortably into your hands so there's no strain on the neck. Hugging the underarms down. And last one, right and left. Slow to reset the upper body, staying in tabletop position. And exhale, fold the mid-ribs, head, neck, chest lifts. Pause for a breath. And exhale, tighten up through the core as you reset to the floor. Exhale, fold and lift. Nice deep chest lift. Folding deep across the mid-ribs, across the bra line. Holding the legs still and stable here at tabletop. We're trying not to press the head, the neck forward over the chest. We want to let the upper abdominals draw the chest up and forward, keeping the head, the ears stacked over the shoulders. Keeping the abdominals engaged and the ribs knitted in, especially on the reset, back to the mat. One more chest lift. And slow to reset. Bringing the feet back down to the mat. We're going to bring our feet, our legs in line with our sit bones, and we're going to lift the heels up off of the mat and reach the arms long. We're going to work off of the ball of the foot for our bridge or our pelvic curl. We'll tilt the hips back and we begin to articulate, peel and curl up, anchoring into the shoulders, lifting the hips up, engaging the glutes. We hold for a breath. Keep that heel lift as you curl and articulate back down. We want to stabilize the foot. So we're in a lifted heel, but we're not overusing the arch of the foot. We want to engage the muscles up the back of the leg as we work up into that bridge. And nice and slow on that articulation as you come down. Being mindful of the shoulders starting to slide up towards the neck, towards the ears as you work through that articulation. Slowing down the descent back to the mat to try and keep the sway out of the body, out of the hips and legs as you move along the spine. Tightening up into the back and the abdominals to co-contract through the core to stabilize the back and hold that nice clean line of the spine. And we'll go for one more bridge, one more pelvic curl. And we'll drop the feet. Rest the heels back to the mat. Fingers will interlace, bringing the hands behind the head. Once again, we're going to move into our chest lift with rotation. Find that little gap at the small of the back as you slide the shoulders down and in. And we exhale to fold and lift. Head, neck, and chest. Coming up into that folded lift. Next exhale, we twist and rotate onto that right shoulder blade towards the right underarm. And then inhale, back through to center. Exhale, tip and twist to the left. And back to center. Smooth glide of the upper body from side to side. And we're weighting down towards the sit bones, towards the tailbone and the hips. So we can press and anchor the pelvis to the mat and allow the upper body, the shoulder girdle, to twist and move. Finding that pivot line right below the chest, just below the shoulder blades at the mid-back. Legs and hips are stable as the upper body twists. One more to each side, allowing the head to rest comfortably back in your hands, into your arms. And we'll reset the shoulders and the head. And we'll bring our legs to tabletop, keeping the hands behind the head, fingers interlaced. Next exhale, we fold and lift, head, neck, and chest. We're working into our crisscross. Right leg reaches out, straight and long, upper body twist to the left. Take it nice and slow to start off with before you start adding any speed to the movement. You want to make sure the leg as it extends is pressing out straighter and longer. So we get that full movement of the leg. Full extension of the knee. And if we go too fast, we end up taking the pressure off one of the hips. Twisting and rocking from hip to hip and adding some shearing through the low back. So take it slow. Weight the hips. Find that clean rotation through the mid-ribs as the leg stretches out long over the mat. One more each side. And we'll draw the knees in towards the chest, rest the shoulders, the head back to the floor, hug the knees in. Let the collarbone spread wide, open the chest as you press the shoulders flat against the mat. And we'll slow to reset the feet. Placing the feet back to the mat, we're going to go into a small V with the feet. Heels are together, so imagine your frog position if you have your feet in your straps or that small V on the foot bar. Heels are going to stay down for this version. As you can see, we're working a lot of bridge work today in with that flexion at the hip and the upper body. On the exhale, we tilt the hips back. We're going to peel and curl up, pressing and squeezing the heels together. Knees are in that external rotation. Legs are actually rotated from the hip, and then we curl and roll down. I want to balance the flexion and the extension today in our session. Focusing on that easy, smooth movement as you curl up and as you reset. I want you to try to focus on taking the sway out of the hips, out of the legs as you curl up and as you curl down. Feeling the legs engaged, the hips are firing, back is engaged to help support the spine as well as the abdominals. Last two bridges. Slow to reset out of that turnout, reaching the arms nice and long. We're going to bring our legs to tabletop position. We're going to stay with a flat back. We're going to reach our right leg out, nice and long. Right leg lowers on the inhale. See if you can tap the mat with the heel. And exhale to lift. Nice and slow as that right leg lowers to the mat on the inhale, straight and long. And exhale to lift. Keeping the left leg still and stable, strong and tabletop as that right leg reaches out, stretches away. One more with that right leg. And drawing the right leg to tabletop. Reset the upper body. And left leg extends out, long over the mat, straighten out, and inhale. Left leg lowers. And exhale to lift. Reaching the legs straight and long. Feel the weight of the shoulder blades, the weight of the hips pressing against the mat as you knit the rib cage in. Drawing the abdominals strong to the back. Last left leg extension. And knees to tabletop. Holding that strong tabletop position, we fold at the mid-ribs to lift the head, neck, and chest. Hands to the knees, we're moving into our double leg stretch. On the inhale, arms and legs move away from your center, and arms circle back around to tabletop legs. Inhale to open and reach. Maintain that chest lift as the arms glide overhead. Reaching strong up overhead with the arms, stretching the arms out and away. The legs press out. Locking the knee out, finding that full extension of the leg. Last three. Shoulders and head to the mat, feet come down to the floor. We're going back into that frog position, that turnout, but this time we're going to lift the heels slightly up off of the mat. I want you to feel the ball of the foot, the toes spread across your mat in that turnout. Squeeze the heels together, and we're going to bridge, either with or without that spinal articulation. Hips tilt back for the curl, and peel and lift up, nice and slow. So we can manage the sway, the shift of the weight of our body from side to side. Slow on the articulation down. Keep the shoulders away from the neck and the ears. Feel the engagement in the legs. Smooth and slow along the spine, taking your time. You can also modify the movement by not lifting the hips all the way up. If you're trying to manage the hamstrings or the calves from cramping, keeping a shorter movement, keeping the hips lower to the floor is helpful. Smooth stretch along the spine as you glide up and down the back. One more. Slow to unwind the legs. We're going to reach that right leg out across the mat, stretch it out nice and long. So you feel the opening at the front of the hip, the thigh begins to stretch. See how long you can take that right leg without moving the hips. You don't want the hips to twist to make it look like that you got more length out of that leg. Let's bring our left knee in towards the chest as we reach that right leg away. Neck is nice and long. We're drawing that left knee in. We're going to pull that left leg cross body, and we're going to rotate and stretch. Try to open along that outer band of muscles along the left leg, along the left hip. And we bring that left arm out to a T. Look out over that left shoulder as you begin to twist deeper into that stretch, reaching that right leg longer, holding for another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Slow to unwind. Coming back to center. We'll reach that left leg out, strong across the mat. Drawing the right knee in towards the chest. Collarbone spreads wide, ribs knit in. We still have that little gap at the small of the back. Keeping the neck nice and long. We take that right leg, cross body, over towards that left shoulder, opening and stretching along the outside of the right leg, the right hip, and right arm opens out to your T. Look out over that right shoulder, deepening that stretch in the right hip, holding for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Coming back to center, we'll bend the knees, place the feet flat. Let's hug the legs together in our bent knee position. Arms come out to our T, palms up towards the ceiling. Legs are going to tip into more of this spine twist supine, but in a more stretched out position. We're going to twist. Drop to that right side, keeping the feet on the mat so we can work that stretch in the twist through the mid-ribs. Right here at the bra line, just below the pecs, as you drop to the right. And using the abdominals and your back to pull the legs to center. And we tip and twist onto the left hip, anchoring that right shoulder blade. Reaching the arms out straighter and longer to increase that stretch along the pecs, the biceps. And belly pulls in tight to bring the legs to center. One more rotation, one more stretch to each side. Anchor the rib cage down and in, being mindful of that arc in the mid or upper back. And back to center. Last one, over to the left side. And exhale to center. We're going to bend the elbows. Bring our forearms, our fingertips reaching straight up towards the ceiling. The back of the tricep, the upper arm is anchored to the mat and legs to tabletop. Both legs to tabletop. We inhale, take the legs, the hips to the right, twisting through the mid-ribs. So, same rotation as before for that stretch, but now we're working that rotation, that abdominal engagement. And exhale to center. Inhale, twisting to the left, anchoring the opposite shoulder blade, and through to center. Knitting the rib cage in as we roll from pocket to pocket. And we are twisting through the mid-back, just below the shoulder blades, right there at the bra line, to keep the low back in neutral. So the whole lower half of our spine and the rest of our body, hips and legs, move together as one solid movement as we twist from side to side. Anchoring the weight of the shoulder blades, the bottom half especially of the shoulder blades, to your mat. Keeping the rib flare out of the movement. Last one to the left. And we pause at center. Fingers interlace, hands behind the head. We come up into that chest lift. And legs twist right as upper body twists left. Back to center. It's a smaller movement, a smaller rotation as far as what the legs and where the legs rotate to when we add this chest lift. Chest is twisting the opposite direction. One more each side. And knees hug into the chest. Bring the knees shoulder width apart. Grab the feet or the back of the legs. We transition into this wide knee stretch. And we rock a little bit from hip to hip. Stretching the neck. Opening the chest. And legs return to tabletop. Arms are going to reach straight up towards the ceiling to help us seat the rib cage in. And on the exhale, arms flow forward. We lift head, neck, and chest. In for hundreds prep. And inhale, slow to reset, drawing the abdominals in as the upper body drops to the mat. Exhale, folding at the mid-ribs to lift head, neck, and chest. Trying to peel the shoulder blades off the floor, folding deep at the bra line. But we're keeping that flexion out of the low back. We still have that little gap, that little curve in the lumbar spine as we fold at the mid-ribs. Reaching the arms straighter and longer down by the side of the body. We reach. On your next breath, we come up, we lift, stay up in that chest lift, legs go forward, straight and long, straight legs open, close, back to tabletop, and upper body resets to the mat. Fold and lift, head, neck, and chest, we're working that coordination. To support the head and the neck better, lift the chest higher or transition the hands. Fingers interlaced behind the head to support the head and neck. Two more. Coming in at tabletop, hug the knees in towards the chest with a little momentum. We curl, we roll up, and we balance in our teaser prep position. Holding those legs floating at tabletop, roll the shoulders down, hinge back. Extend the spine, lift the chest. And when you're ready, hands and arms come off the legs. We hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Feet drop to the mat. We move into our butterfly stretch, soles of the feet together. Knees fall out to the side. We start off sitting tall, nice and long. Feel the weight in your sit bones. And with that flat back, that nice extension, we hinge forward at the hip. Elbows bend slightly, tucking them in at your side. And we lengthen and stretch as we hinge forward. Holding for another breath. And slow to restack, sitting up nice and tall. Let's bend the knees, place the feet flat for a moment. We're going to work a nice rotational stretch. We're going to lace our right foot under the left leg, wrap it around the left hip, and then that left leg crosses around the right. Find the weight in both of your hips. It's easy to rock off that left side. We want to plant that left hip. Weight into that left side to feel that stretch. And then right arm wraps around that left knee, and we're going to twist through the mid-ribs and look back over that left shoulder, trying to straighten the spine, extend the back, and lengthen and stretch as the pelvis, the hips press into the floor. So you have that oppositional work of the hip driving down and the spine stretching up. And we hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nice and slow as you unwind. We'll change our leg cross. Left leg laces under the right, wraps around that right hip as we bring the right leg around to the outside of that left thigh. Once again, first find the weight in your hips. Don't let that right side lift up too much. And we're going to sit nice and tall. Wrap the left arm around that right knee and we rotate through the mid-ribs. We look back over that right shoulder and we extend the spine. Lifting up nice and long, nice and tall. And we hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Slow to unwind. Let's come on to our left side for some sideline leg work. We're going to start with a tabletop leg position for that bottom left leg. Bent 90 degrees at the hip, at the knee. Head is resting on that left arm. We're going to float that right leg up off the mat. Right hand to the hip, and right leg is going to lift and lower. Reaching that right leg out nice and long. You're going to get a little bit of flexion in the low back, that lateral flexion. But we want to make sure that the leg as it lifts doesn't put too much flexion into the back. We want to extend the leg out. Allow the leg to move in the hip. Ribs and abdominals are knitted in. We're still keeping that nice strong core as the leg moves. And we're going to make a circle. Starting at parallel, the right leg comes forward into hip flexion, and then we reach up and circle back, coming down at the bottom. You've got a bit of hip extension, and then coming through. Parallel to the floor, we reach up and back. Reaching out nice and long. You can work a flexed ankle or a pointed toe. Extending and straightening that leg out of the hip. And we change directions. Right leg sweeps back, reaches up and forward. Bracing through the abdominals, using your back muscles to hold the spine nice and still so the leg can move free in the hip. One more. And we'll bend the knees, stack the legs. Let's pull our heels back in line with our tailbone. And we're going to rotate this right leg up towards the ceiling. Feet stay together as we work this reverse clamshell. We rotate the leg in the hip. Feeling that tension at the center of the hip in those muscles as those external rotators fire to rotate that leg up towards the ceiling. And the feet stay together. One more. And we're going to lift ourselves up, come up onto that forearm. We'll add a side plank before switching sides. Knitting the ribs in, the right arm reaches up for the ceiling. And we're going to lift the hips up and through. Stretching that right arm nice and long. Squeeze through inner thighs. Press the hips forward so you've got that alignment. Ear, shoulder, hip to knee. As you reach, holding that side plank for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Slow to lower. And we're going to flip onto that right side. Bottom right leg is bent in that side lying tabletop position. Your head is resting on your right arm. Left hand to the hip, reach that left leg out and exhale. Straight leg lifts up towards the ceiling and slow to lower. Nice and smooth glide of that left leg. Reaching out, reaching up towards the ceiling. Allowing the leg to move in the hip. There's a little bit of flexion in the small of the back. And keeping that left shoulder down, away from the neck, away from the ears. And we pause at parallel. Left leg comes forward. We're going to sweep up and circle back into a little bit of extension before coming forward. Sweeping along the mat, just parallel to the floor. Circling that leg in the hip, reaching it out. And we'll change directions. Left leg reaches back into extension, coming up and around to the front. Again, you can work pointed toe or flexion at the ankle. Whatever helps you keep that leg nice and straight to get you to stretch it out. Last circle. And then we'll bend both knees, stack the legs, bring the heels back in line with your tailbone. And for those reverse clamshells, on the next exhale, left leg rotates up towards the ceiling and down. Keeping that rotation of the leg in the hip. Don't let it creep up into the back or let the hips twist back to make it look like you got more movement out of that leg in the hip. One more. And we lift up. Coming up onto that right forearm, shoulders slide down the back. Left arm reaches up towards the ceiling, and we lift the hips up and press them forward into that side plank. Ears stacked in line over the shoulder, the hip to the knee. Reaching up nice and long, squeezing through inner thighs, engaging your glutes as you brace through abdominals and back extensors. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Hips drop. We flip over face down to the mat. Arms come nice and long down by your side, reaching for the knees, reaching for the feet. And on the inhale, head, neck, chest lifts. And exhale to lower. Legs are stretching out long. We're pulling the rib cage in, drawing the belly in tight. And slow to lower. Finding that fold at the bra line just below the shoulder blades to add that upper back, that thoracic extension, keeping the pressure off the low back by engaging the legs and the glutes, zipping up through the abdominals. Last 3. And hands come by the chest. Toes curl under, we peel up, and we sit back towards the heels. Reaching out nice and long overhead. One more breath, and then curl and restack. Curling up to that nice, tall position. Arms reach up nice and long overhead, fingers interlace, and we hinge up and over to the right and center. Lift and lengthen up and over to the left and center. One more each side. And arms rest down by your side. All right, guys. Awesome work today. Great job.